Shane found Mike Cowboy Bullock taking it easy, sitting up against the half-raised hospital bed. Wearing nothing but baggy red boxers and eating a vanilla ice cream cone. From the flat screen mounted in the corner of the beige wall, a muted college football game played. Shane pulled up a brown cushioned chair next to the bed. "You look like Forrest Gump."
"You look like a no-good troublemaker."
Shane couldn't even fake a smile. "Roxy said you got a pretty nasty wound. What the hell happened?" Mike stopped licking the ice cream. He stared at the muted football game for a long moment, as if he saw the replay of his own death on the LCD screen, before grumbling and tossing the rest of the cone into the wastebasket next to the bed. "Amy all right?" "Gonna be just fine. Right now I'm more interested in what happened to you and to the diner." Mike grimaced.
"Remember back in '94 when I got on that Brahma Sikkim? That one that near about dug my grave?"
"Rings a distant bell, yeah."
"I was young and crazy and the money was good. The women were always hot and the beer was always cold. I could have gotten me a shiny gold buckle had I shown that beast the ride of it. But him and me just weren't figuring up for the same ride. As soon as his back end lifted up, I started scooting my skinny ass down. But I knew if I slid too far, he'd snap his head up and probably break every bone in my pretty face."
Mike sucked in a deep, restless breath while he reshifted his weight on the bed. He looked at Shane, a toothy grin.
"Baker, you might not believe this, but I did used to have a pretty face. I could have been a movie star and ran Eastwood and them fellas out of town. Hell, I damn sure could have played that Lieutenant Duncan part to the hilt on account of my first wife said I looked like Kevin Costner. But now that I think about it, Luann was just about as dumb as a box of..."
"Just tell me what happened at the diner."
"Right."
Mike nodded, fumbled for the TV remote attached to the bed, and clicked off the football game.
"Ain't not good in scraping up the past from the bottom of the skillet when the skillet's cracked to hell. Reckon you didn't come to hear about my pretty mug."
Shane nodded.
"Well, that bull, Sikkim, he just kept on bucking his ass end. I held on for dear life with both hands. And even though I could hear the crowd cheering, I wasn't about to get too damn cocky and wave one arm. But I really wanted to. Nah, I just held on tight as ever. And Sikkim started snorting like the devil on coke. I think the bull was getting mad because I was holding on too damn good. 4 seconds. 5 seconds. Just 3 seconds longer and I'd have the money and the fancy buckle and walk away retired. 3 seconds on the back of a beast like that's an eternity. Some argue that time speeds up when you're in the thick of it. But it didn't. Not for me. And as I suspected he might, that damn bull bolted up. I wrapped my legs around his flanks and gripped him harder than a drunk grips a long neck. Then he threw his head back, his rear up. That crazy fucker whirled and bucked. And somewhere around the 7th second, I ate a mouthful of dirt. Went out black as coal. Saw my life flash before my eyes. Too much stale beer, too many hard women, and too many broken bones."
Shane leaned back and laced his fingers over his chest. "Diner was that scary, huh?"
"Most frightening 7 seconds of my life, Baker. I couldn't even reckon with that beast no matter how determined I was. Want to know the worst part?"
Shane gave Mike a slow nod. Mike sighed.
"As mean and crazy as that there beast was, he was predictable as the rise of the early morning sun. I knew he'd buck up like that. I prepared for it. I'd studied his behavior for months before I took to his back. And the bastard still got the best of me. Sometimes knowing what to expect don't give much of an edge.
And knowing too much makes the game less fun."
I sure as hell couldn't have predicted that weirdness at the diner."
Shane sat forward. "Tell me."
All started when that stranger with the sword strolled in. He started pestering Amy, and, of course, we all took offense.
"Stranger with a sword? Did he have red hair and wear green leather?
That's a fella.
So he was after Amy. I knew it.
Well, that ain't the all of it, I'm afraid. You see, we were all ready to come to Amy's defense, and I personally didn't have any qualms about shooting that stranger had he tried to hurt her. But I got me some good instincts when it comes to people, and that boy just didn't seem like trouble.
Mike eyed Shane.
Nothing like you.
Shane smiled. Go on.
That's when the thing came out of nowhere. Just popped. Took Charlie. Just like that. Gone. Snatched literally into thin air. He was a gem of a good man. I can't help wondering if we'll ever see him again.
Shane looked down, then back at Mike. You think the guy in leather was behind it? Some kind of illusion? A magic trick?
It wasn't him. It was a monster.
Looked like a mechanical spider.
As big as a bull, and a whole lot meaner than Sikkim.
Shane looked at the IV tubed into Mike's arm. Demerol's some good stuff.
That's just a saline drip. I know it sounds crazy. I wouldn't believe it myself if I hadn't seen it. Whatever that thing was, it took Charlie and then killed Sam.
Mike abruptly hesitated, as if something had jumped up from beneath the bed and bit him. A ghostly sadness reached his eyes.
Sam was just in for a quick bite after a day of hunting. Left that morning, kissed his wife goodbye, and had no idea. That kiss. That goodbye.
He palmed his bandaged shoulder.
That goddamn thing put a metal leg right through me. Hurt like nobody's business.
Sam dead. Charlie gone. Mike injured. Mechanical spider? What happened to this big-ass spider? Mike arched a brow.
You believe me then?
The question startled Shane because he realized that he did believe him, and that gave Shane even more of a startle.
That boy with the sword. I'd be damned if he didn't jump up on top of it and ride it like Zorro before he put that sword right through the middle of it. Then the thing just disappeared as easy as it came. Won't ever forget what I saw in that diner.
Shit just kept getting weirder and weirder. And the worst part? Shane was starting to believe every bit of it. And Atticus had something to do with all this fuck-upness. Shane stood from the cushioned chair. He circled to the end of the bed and stared down at Mike. A moment of awkward silence lingered as the men looked at each other. Finally, Mike spoke.
Sure glad Amy's gonna be okay.
Me too. White. Endlessly. Everywhere. The walls. The floors. The ceilings. And Amy. Here. Amongst nothing but white. Everything. Some kind of bizarre infinite void. No escape. Trapped. Inside her own mind. What was left of it anyway? Was she back in the psych ward? Pumped full of antipsychotics? Amy looked down at her hands, arms, legs. But no restraints of any kind chained her extremities. In horror, she realized her extremities were not extremities at all, just faint wisps of what used to be hands, arms, and legs. Just shreds of torn cotton in a milky current. And she was naked. At least, she would have been naked had she been corporeal. She was a mere silhouette of her old self. Was she dead? Was this heaven? Or was it hell? She panned her blank surroundings, but only a large seamless tent of white canvassed her vicinity. Everything in this damn room was so damned white. Her entire universe had become an envelope that had been sealed closed, trapping her inside like a forgotten letter, all tucked away and bleary. Help! Somebody help! With her barely corporeal form, she took a step. The non-corporeal tissue of a foot was awfully heavy. A stone boulder anchored every strained step she made in attempts to trudge through this alabaster world, a world she could not see, nor feel, nor hear. She knew she was crying, but felt no tears on her face. Every step felt like fingers working through uncooked floury dough. After what seemed like hours of miserable tediousness, the faintest traces of a threshold appeared. Her threadbare hand reached out in dreamlike sedative motion toward the hair-thin silvery line. A muted falling away of something. A frameless window opened, and fleeting images drowned in the nether of the threshold. Amy as a child. Gone, drowned in whiteness. Amy and Vicky on the curb. Gone, drowned in whiteness. Shane in his uniform. Gone. More and more and more of her past. Gone. Swept into oblivion. Melted into milky nothingness. In a lethargic shuddering, whirled in a box shaken in slow motion, and consciousness falling. Consciousness rendered obsolete. Undeveloped nothingness. The threshold gone. Alabaster Dream Cove. Voided to colorless nightmare. Stagnant. Heavy plodding. Listless. Leaden. Blanched ineptness. Something needed to be here. Where was everything? This was no room at all. Not a white padded room where they put the insane. This place. A hollow void teetering on the tip of a featureless nothing-all. She was dead. And this was her afterlife. The gates of nowhere that would remain bleached and slammed shut to allow only the apexes of nothingness to forever root her within a mystical white hell. She wept and she screamed and she tore at herself. But none of it made a sound or made a change. Nothing would ever change. Eternity be thy name. Help me, please. Whiteness. For hours that crawled past, for aeons she wept her muted cries and mouthed her silent pleas. A sound of desperation that lingered in deafness as she padded her way through the sluggish, colorless, meaningless swamp of infinite emptiness. Trudging, dragging her stringy remains with the effort of a frail feather through a bog. Resolve finally reduced to what the rest of her world had become. Amy lowered to her wiry knees. But the perspective never changed. Nor could she even feel her knees. She stopped giving conscious thought to time, or space, or life, or death, or anything else. The substance of the void started to assimilate with her own existence, absorbing her into it. Now an ointment seeking into the pores of some amorphous entity. Her new alabaster realm grew sticky as if she was being bathed in a syrupy porridge. It would all be over soon. This terrible nightmare, only a momentary fraction of the rest of her damnation. Or maybe there was still hope for salvation. Doubtful. This was a godless waiting room. Waiting. Ma'am. Go away. Ma'am. You're not real. You were never real. I'm dead and you didn't save me. Mother. Is this my hell? My own personal hell? To be taunted and tortured? Amy. Another voice. Familiar voice. Vicky? Tortured by voices. You're dead. You're not real.
Amy. You're not dead, Amy.
Then I'm completely insane, because you're dead. You've been dead for a long time.
My friend Tobias has a special place for us to hide.
A flickering of silvery snowflakes on a white backdrop. And a grayed staircase spiraling downward appeared. But it unfurled and descended much quicker than anything else of this aeon-crawling world. Come, Mother. I await you. Amy crept forward on hands and knees, crawled to the staircase spiraling downward into a snowy white crypt where the everlasting unknowns rested in eternal tombs constructed of tertiary stones and antediluvian wisdom. Crawling. Finally, she reached the bottom landing. Still white and empty. She swung herself upward to see the visage of a teenage boy. His head was bald, cheekbones high and defined, skin smooth with immaturity but eyes black with malevolence. Suddenly, her wire wisp of a silhouette was pulled toward him, her body gliding through the whiteness with ease. As she neared him, more whiteness closed in behind her. Now she was in a new white room. But when she took a tentative step forward, she could move easily. She lifted both her hands in front of her face, clasped her fingers, her very corporeal fingers. She was solid. Better. But she was still so confused and frustrated. Where the hell was she? What the hell was she?
Why? Why didn't you help me? You just stood there and watched while that animal tortured me.
Tobias stared at her. Just stared at her. The jerk. Her own blood, her son, stared at her. Bastard! She blinked and the boy suddenly appeared inches in front of her. A deep scowl curled his thin lips. He peered down at her as if she were a pesky insect to be swatted.
Everything is going according to plan.